So fast fashion, you know what it is in terms of clothing, but have you ever thought about perfume as fast fashion? If not, then please keep watching. Hello, I'm Claire Smith and I make videos all about perfume and perfume science, but I'm also really interested in the consumerism around perfume. So if that's something that interests you, then please consider subscribing if you haven't done already, and also please like this video if you do like this video. So why am I talking about fragrance being a fast fashion industry? Well, I've been comparing my consumption of fragrance with my consumption of clothes pre the pandemic. I absolutely loved shopping with fast fashion brands, and okay, I would be more sustainable and I would buy a lot of secondhand clothing as well. But I wasn't averse to popping into Primark and buying the odd thing. It's something that is just really, really affordable. It just makes the consumer think a little bit less about their purchasing decisions. And it's also how I feel about cheaper perfume brands. It's about how I feel with the number of releases that are constantly thrust in my face on YouTube. It's about how I feel with the number of fragrances that people own. And all these thoughts have come together to make this video all about fragrance as fast fashion. So what is fast fashion? Well, fast fashion is the translation of a catwalk trend by a mass market brand. So brands such as Zara, Primark and H&M, they are all fast fashion brands, and they make these items at much lower cost, much greater quantities, and they bring them to market really, really fast. So the average consumer can get a very fashionable but still very cheap item very quickly. And it's that instant gratification that is a critical part of fast fashion. So what's the problem with fast fashion? Well, basically it's unsustainable, it causes overconsumption, and it generates a lot of waste. So how is perfume like fast fashion? So let's just start off with probably a really obvious way that perfume can be like fast fashion. So the first thing is that fast fashion brands themselves have gone into making perfumes. You've probably all seen those videos where people haul about 20 Zara fragrances and then go through and tell you whether they're good dupes or not good dupes of the designer fragrances that are meant to be duping. And Zara are quite well known for making really, okay perfumes at a very low price point. Their perfumes generally retail for £25 or much less actually. And they have loads of dupes of mainstream perfumes. So they have things like Pink Flambe, which is actually Juicy Couture Viva La Juicy. They have things like Gardenia, which is actually Black Opium, Red Vanilla, which is Lancome's La Vie est Belle, and also Red Temptation, which is Baccarat Rouge 540. So all of these fragrances allow the consumer to get a catwalk trend, so a very famous perfume at a much lower cost. So this is a really obvious example of how fragrance is a fast fashion industry. These brands also use really good perfumers to make their fragrances. So Zara have been known to collaborate with Jerome Epinette and also with Jo Malone. So in that way, they are also giving the consumer a sort of touch of luxury in their fast fashion fragrances. But is it just fast fashion brands with fast fashion fragrances? No, it isn't. I think there's a really strong argument to be made that designer and niche brands are also entering a fast fashion kind of market, because that's the profitable market. How many fragrance brands release, 10, 20 fragrances per year? And how long are those fragrances on the market for before they're discontinued? The lifetime of fragrances on the market has shortened. But why is this? There's big money in fragrance and massive profit margins. It's supposedly one of the most profitable industries to be in. There's been huge global growth in the market size over the last 30 years. And in 2021, the global market for fragrance was worth $30.6 billion. And by 2028, it's projected to reach $43.2 billion. So how does the fragrance industry sustain that kind of growth? Well, they need consumers to buy more bottles and to spend more money on every fragrance. So how are they doing that? So the first thing that they're doing is making you like them instantaneously. They are the perfume drug, the instant hit of happiness that you get when you try a fragrance in store. If you think about old school fragrances such as Chanel No. 5 and Shalimar by Guerlain, how often has anybody tried that fragrance and loved it instantaneously? They're not things that have friendly openings. They either have a very sort of almost medicinal feel like Shalimar has, or they have a very strong aldehyde blast like Chanel No. 5 does, and that is not palatable to the modern consumer. Even something more modern like Angel from 1992 really does not have a friendly opening. It's the dry down where the beauty is with those fragrances. Now contrast those fragrances with something marketed today. Openings are designed to be instantaneously beautiful, to be instantaneously likeable, to lack any kind of alcohol or harsh notes in the beginning, and perhaps even longevity is sacrificed to have a nice opening. Because that is the thing that is going to sell that fragrance. People don't wait around for things to dry down. People want something that is instantaneously beautiful. People do not wait for fragrances to dry before they sniff them on their wrists. So to maximise sales in stores, they need you to instantly like that fragrance. The second thing is that there are more and more fragrances being released every single year. So because it's me, I've made a graph. So if you look at this graph, you can see that there's been a huge increase in the number of perfumes that have been being released each year. And that increase has been near exponential. So if you look at the number of fragrances that were released in 1970, say, that was around 150 fragrances. By the 1980s, that was around 230 fragrances. By the 1990s, it was averaging around 380 fragrances per year. And by 2004, we hit the critical number of 1,000 fragrances being released per year. Just 6 years later, in 2010, that number had doubled again to 2,000 fragrances per year. And only 4 years later, in 2014, the number had doubled again to 4,000 fragrances per year. By 2018, we hit peak Perfume with nearly 6,000 fragrances being released. And okay, we've just had a global pandemic, so fragrance releases have slowed down a little, but they're still around 5,000 to 6,000 fragrances per year. So why are they releasing so many fragrances? Well, new is exciting, new gets attention, new gets social media interest, new is given prominent positions in stores, new is something that people purchase. And what's the easiest route to a new fragrance for a brand? Well, it's a flanker fragrance. And I've just tried 4 different fragrances that were released in 2022. And all 4 of these fragrances are flanker fragrances, which I think is really interesting. So what's the attraction of making a flanker perfume as opposed to an original perfume for a fragrance brand? Well, it's because you can hang any kind of advertising or anything like that off the original fragrance. If you've got a successful pillar fragrance, it just gives the flanker a boost in sales. It makes people more interested to buy that fragrance. And the one brand that really does this more than any other with their fragrances is Mugler. So Mugler had a massive hit in 1992 with Angel, as we all know. But back in 2019, when they were launching Angel Nova, why didn't they just call this fragrance Nova? It's because they wanted to give this fragrance an initial boost by using the same name, by saying that this was an almost flanker of Angel. If you've tried both these fragrances, these two have virtually nothing in common with each other than the fact that they're both strong fragrances. So actually this is really, really cheeky of Mugler because it's fooling the consumer into thinking these are similar when they're just not. So the third thing is that there's been a shift in consumer behaviour from having signature fragrances to being a bit of a flirt with fragrances, to having, perhaps a fragrance wardrobe, to having multiple fragrances at the same time. So how many people have a signature fragrance these days and how many people actually have huge collections? And how has that changed from 15 years ago, for example? I know 15 years ago I was buying one fragrance at a time and using it up entirely and then going and buying a different fragrance. Whereas now I clearly have, tens of fragrances. But ultimately I'm on YouTube, and even before I was on YouTube back in 2020, I still had a collection of 30 fragrances. Which suggests to me that there's been some kind of shift in the way fragrance is marketed and the way fragrance is consumed. So it goes back to the thing of there being more releases, more advertising, more choice, and also the consumer having more money to purchase fragrance. Fragrance, relatively speaking, to income is much cheaper than it was, say, 30 years ago. It's no longer the luxury product that it used to be. You can also buy very inexpensive fragrances. You can easily find a fragrance for under £20 now. There's really been an expansion in the cheaper end of the market, and that's meant that people are more willing to buy more fragrance more often. The fourth reason is social media and its influence. So even social media itself is getting faster. You know, the shift from YouTube to Instagram to TikTok, those mediums are all things that are ever more instantaneous. And I think social media has really changed the fragrance market. It's really changed the way perfumes are advertised. You know, there's the whole influencer thing where influencers get sent fragrances for free and then they review them or say how amazing they are if they're in some kind of sponsored deal. Not judging. So with social media, you're probably just more aware of more perfumes because you're no longer reliant on what you can see in your local store. You can see what there is on YouTube. Also, social media creates hype around fragrances, so you might be more excited to try something because you've heard somebody talk about it. You might recognise a bottle in store and think, oh, I want to try that one. Social media generates curiosity. It makes you want to try a fragrance. Social media is also normalising previously insane concepts, things that people would never have done before social media. So social media has entirely normalised people having humongous perfume collections. People use perfume as their backgrounds on YouTube. You will often see someone sitting in front of a huge shelving unit with literally hundreds of fragrances, having spent thousands of pounds on these fragrances, and it will be like they're sitting in front of a shop window almost. And really, you know, is that a normal thing for most people? No, it isn't. But is it normal on YouTube? Yes, it is. People also have perfume wardrobes, so you will get videos about fragrances for summer or fragrances for going on holiday, fragrances for work, fragrances for meeting the parents, fragrances for Netflix and chill. I'm not making this up. You can go and find those videos and watch them. They exist. People make videos on finding the right perfume for all of these occasions, so you can see why people would see the need to buy different fragrances, because why would you want to use the same fragrance when you can have a different one for every single thing you ever do? So let's just roast me for a minute. So how many fragrances do I currently own? Well, I think I own, and this is really thinking, I think I own around 107 fragrances right now. So that's excluding travel sprays, and that's also excluding the huge number of samples I now own. So really, how many times in 1 year am I actually going to wear each of those fragrances, providing I don't have favourites, which I do? How many times? It's going to be 3 or 4 times a year for each of those fragrances. So do I know those fragrances? Am I aware of those fragrances' flaws? Do I accept things that are perhaps subpar because I don't wear them that often and so they don't annoy me? Probably I do. You probably shouldn't listen to people with huge collections of perfumes because they probably only wear them 3 or 4 times a year. So if someone only wears a fragrance once every 100 days, do they really know that fragrance? Let's be honest about it, they probably don't. Another thing that YouTube has completely normalised is blind buying. So how many people watch fragrance blind buy videos? What is it about those videos that makes people want to watch? It's because it's exciting. It's because blind buying is almost addictive. It gives you a high when you get a good one. It gives you an exciting kind of zing when you have to open that package and find out whether you've been right about selecting that fragrance or not. And it also is just not a normal behaviour, is it? In what other aspect of life would you buy something that was worth £100 that you hadn't tried? Blind buying, again, also makes customers less discerning because there's a guilt there. There's a feeling that if you've spent this much on a perfume, you need to like it. You need to have been right in your purchase decision. If everybody's honest about blind buying, how many times have you blind bought a fragrance and thought, do you know what, if I tried that in store, I probably wouldn't have bought that fragrance? I know I felt that, and I think a lot of people will have felt that. So what's the really big thing that YouTube has normalised? Well, it's the fragrance declutter. So why are declutters a thing? It's because of, well, blind buying for one, but also because declutters bring a lot of views. People seem to love watching declutter videos. And you can see, actually, if you look at somebody's channel and search by views, usually at the top of that list will be a declutter. Declutters just get a lot of watch time, and that encourages creators to create those kinds of videos. If you look at the most successful channels, they will often be the ones with the most declutter videos. The fifth thing is online purchasing. If you think back 30 years ago, if your local store didn't have a fragrance in stock, would you actually be bothered to ring up the distributor to find out where it was stocked and then ring that store to try to get them to send you a bottle, having given them your credit card details? You probably wouldn't, would you? You'd have to be quite a fragrance nut to do that. But the internet just makes it easy. You can get any fragrance you want at a click of a button. And that is instantaneous gratification. It is very much like a fast fashion kind of industry. It's something where you have oodles of choice. You can buy whatever you like, whatever time of day you like, whenever you want, from wherever you want. And it's something that doesn't feel like purchasing. It's something that makes purchasing easy because you don't feel like you're handing over physical cash. You don't feel that you're spending money in a way. Online purchasing can often have threshold spends as well, so you will end up perhaps buying 1 or 2 bottles more than you perhaps intended to get free delivery, thinking, well, you know, it's free returns, I can send one back if I'm not that enamoured with it, having tried a sample included with it. But if you've watched my Psychology of Perfume shopping video, you will know that there's something called loss aversion. And loss aversion means that people in possession of something are far less likely to want to relinquish it than they were to buy that thing in the first place. So really, perfume brands offering free returns are onto a good thing because they are going to have a low rate of returns. So what can you do to stand against fast fashion in fragrance? What behaviours can you change? Well, the first one is you can sample your fragrances more. You can think more about your purchase decisions. You can try fragrances in store and you can perhaps try them multiple times and let them dry down and really consider whether you want that fragrance or not. You can also buy more sustainably, so you can think about buying secondhand fragrances, for example. And you can also learn about fragrance brands so you can know what fragrance brands are doing to limit their effects on the environment. Ultimately, the truth is that fragrance brands are not going to want to hurt their bottom line. So if they're releasing 6,000 fragrances every year, they're not going to calm down because that's going to hurt their bottom line. They are only going to do things that are going to save them money in the longer term or get them more custom. So what do you think? Do you think that we should all be trying to make brands more responsible and trying to make them more sustainable? What do you think about fragrance brands releasing 6,000 different fragrances every single year? Do you think that's too many? Would you prefer that fragrances dwelled on the market for longer before they were discontinued? Does it annoy you, the number of flanker fragrances that are produced by all these brands all the time? So thank you so much for watching, and if you haven't done already, please consider subscribing, and also please like this video if you like this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!